All right. Hi, everybody. We're live again today. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Melanie with Social Connect at White Glove, and I'm here today to talk with Ken New, and we'll be answering some really important questions regarding inflation. So, Ken, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah, let's do this. I think it's going to be so helpful. I
Great.
think the first question that I have for you that comes top to mind, for me is like, what is inflation? And I guess when I think about it, it's like super complex from where I'm standing. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. We always hear the word inflation, and so what does it really mean? And in its simplest answer, it's really a loss of purchasing power. That's ultimately what it is. Now, how do we measure that typically? Well, there's an annualized percentage, and that annualized percentage is the kind of the general price index of things called the Consumer Price Index or the CPI over time. So one of the issues I think with inflation that's misunderstood is that when it's reported, it often will exclude things like food and oil or energy costs and home purchases. And I just think that that's a dramatic understatement when you think about inflation, um, because those are core costs for a consumer, for a retiree, for us today. So and so you might ask, so well, why is that? Why is it not all everything that goes up? And there's multiple reasons for it, but I think there's kind of this overall theme that in many ways the government really doesn't want us to know just how our standard of living is being reduced. Because my thought is inflation really is more of a stealth tax.
Yeah.
And it's really in the best interest of those that lead the country to make you feel better about day-to-day living expenses and things like that. So that's the way I kind of talk about inflation generally.
Yeah, that's like got my mind running because I know for me, I spend a lot of money on food and things like that. So to think about how that's changing, and I might not even be realizing it, is like a wake up call. Like, oh my gosh, wait a second. Yeah, these are changing, and I'm just like not registering it. So I think for me, that's where it's at for me. Um, but I think, what does it mean to investors and retirees then?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's one of the key things because very often a retiree is living on a fixed expense.
Yeah.
When I think about what it means, it's really the runway that we're on. What's the path that we're on with inflation? And what's that impact look like? And really to look to the future, I think we can look a bit in the past and kind of look at what's happened really kind of the last time that we had an excessive inflation. There's a lot of circumstance now that typically will give us the impression that we may have extended inflation. A lot of the economic events that we've got, supply chain disruptions, not to mention the amount of money that we printed as a nation, is all inflationary. So we begin to look at what was the last time we had excessive inflation when it was really problematic. And that period probably would be from 1975 to 1990, that 15-year period right there. We had very aggressive inflation. And just to give you some perspective on that, in really over the 46 years since 1975. Since 1975 till now, you would need over $5,000 of income to buy what you could have bought in 1975 for $1,000. So what does that mean? That means that you have really enough money only buy about 20% of what you would buy back in 1975. That's a loss of 80% of purchasing power. So that's a dramatic way to be thinking about how inflation.
That was, I mean, jaw dropping for me. 80%. I mean, that is kind of a huge deal. So I think, what's happening with inflation today? Are we creating, 1975 to 1990 inflation right now?
Well, I kind of alluded to it in the way that I responded to begin with, and let me just add really to that generally. So really, again, what you're asking is, are we going back to 75 to 1990? I don't know for sure. I think generally speaking, if anything, we could have that style of inflation, but could we have even more aggressive? I mean, there's circumstances today that didn't exist back then, pro and con to that question. But let me give some perspective to it here. So what are we currently doing right now? There's the Fed, the Federal Reserve, has a quantitative easing program. That quantitative easing program has been going on for a while, but it's currently producing about 120 billion to 1.4 trillion dollars of printed money annually. Now, those are big numbers. That's a big bunch of money that's being printed. Now, Jerome Powell, who's the Fed chief, the Federal Reserve chief, and he has stated that he would like to roll that back or begin to reduce that amount in the years 2022 and 2023. Now, I don't know that that's going to happen. The Biden administration has made it well known that they would like to have this same kind of growth in the economy and the same kind of production, strong kind of economy that we got in place through the midterm elections of November of 2022. So if Jerome Powell doesn't go along with that and continue to quantitative ease, then there's a pretty good chance that he'll be out of office and they'll appoint someone that may continue to do that. That's not new news. That's out in the news every day, and they're talking about that. So, what it really means is, no, there's not going to be a reduction in quantitative easing. Very, very likely. There's also going to be no rate hikes. Interest rates are at historic lows. No monetary tightening strategies. So what it means is that if shutting down the economy creates a depression, okay, then that will happen is that they plan, I think, generally to print more money. If the stock market crashes 30 or 40%, what are they going to do? Probably print more money. If municipal bonds collapse because investors don't believe the cities and states are going to be able to keep up with healthcare costs and pension costs and all their debt obligations, what will they do? Well, probably print more money. If the economy continues to struggle with the Delta variant and economies are shut down in different cities and states, what will they do? I'll probably print more money. So it seems to me that that's their only recourse at this point in time. They can't lower interest rates because they're at all-time lows. Now, look, if this sounds hokey to you, don't really, I'm not sure I believe in all that. Try to put some perspective on this. Our government has printed so much money to offset all these negative consequences that I'm talking about, the COVID-19 lockdowns and all of that. So if you put together all the printed money in the history of the United States, then just about, it's been reported, just about 40% of all that money was printed in 1 year alone. And yeah, you guessed it, 2020. So 40% of all the printing that's printed in the United States historically happened in 2020. That's just a whole bunch of money out there. And I'm really not sure it's going to stop anytime soon. There's a bill out there right now, $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill for climate change and infrastructure and many other things like that. So what I'm suggesting is we're officially manipulating the economy.
Yeah. Wow. That is, my jaw literally dropped. I mean, 40% of that just in the past year, essentially, that's astronomical amount. It's really hard to like wrap my brain around that number.
Yeah, and I've got to tell you too, it really is not just a United States problem. Okay. This is it used to be that if we're having issues economically in the United States and there's some kind of special circumstances there, kind of challenges, if you will, then we go outside the country. We'd buy stocks outside globally, buy some debt of other countries and so on. But, look, The rest of the world has drank the same Kool-Aid. I mean, they have printed a lot of money over this period of time. Since March of 2020, same kind of report. It was talking about the central banks all over the world. Since March of 2020, they printed $27 trillion in stimulus. So the entire planet has printed $27 trillion in stimuluses. Now that, in perspective, is 30% of the entire gross domestic product, the GDP, on the planet. So we've got a United States challenge, we've got a world economic challenge, and here it is.
Oh my goodness, that's even on a grander scale, that's even more mind-boggling. Just those numbers, I'm speechless almost in terms of, like, that's something I'm never thinking about, but hearing you speak about it is just so interesting. And that report itself is such valuable information that there's so much to uncover in there alone. I mean, these are things that are so important to know, but I feel like, no one's really kind of talking about that. It almost feels
the
like
way to think about it. I'll give you some perspective. One of the ways to think about it is, what does it really mean to people? What does it mean to investors, citizens of all the different countries, the United States, and so on? Going back to my statement that inflation really is a tax, it's a stealth tax. Now look, it's not an actual tax. All right, and it's not like sales tax or income tax. It's not that. It's not a line item on the 1040. So you're not, seeing on that there's a line that costs you 2 or 3% or any. But what it is, it's this unseen tax. It affects everyone. It affects consumers. It affects the corporations. Anyone who's buying goods and services and providing goods and services. It affects them. And so this inflation tax, if you will, or stealth tax. That's why it's so complicated, because it permeates throughout the economies and it affects everyone. So it's a huge challenge, not only in the United States, but all over the planet. And, I think it's just, really, really important for many consumers to understand that this kind of economic result that comes from printing huge amounts of money, that comes from the monetary policies of the different countries, are affecting the citizens and the corporations and companies trying to do business.
Yeah, that's definitely a great way to frame it in terms of kind of putting a meaning to what's happening. I think we're all pretty familiar with taxes, and I think putting it in that lens is definitely a great way to understand what's really happening behind the scenes. And I just can't help but think about, how you mentioned before, people who are living on fixed income, like, what does this look like for them? And how is this, really affecting them? Because that's, a whole nother ball game in terms of a demographic of people that are being affected by this.
Yeah, let me give you some color to that. I think that's interesting, and I'll take some commentary from a different presentation that I had. But we're as a world, as not only the United States, but really on our planet, we are facing something that we've really never faced before. And to give you some perspective, the typical retiree lives on a fixed income. Mm-hmm. And so now we're living longer. So it has more stress point to the idea that those assets need to be able to produce for longer periods of time and be effective. And what's interesting about that is that when we think about the retirement environment in the United States, which again is just really kind of a way to view the retirement environment around the world, that there are more retirees in the baby boomer generation. That's kind of famous. So, many people can relate to the baby boomers in the United States. There are more baby boomers here in the next few years that will be retired than the entire amount of people that retired in the United States over history.
Wow.
What did I just say? All the people who retired before the baby boomer generation do not amount to the same amount of people who will be retired as baby boomers as this generation comes to a close.
That is crazy.
Yeah, just huge amounts. And I'll add a little bit of clarification to that. Retirees who do live on fixed income, and we take a look at the typical investment strategy going back just 10 years ago. So in 2011, you could put together, in the financial services industry, we would put together a typical balanced portfolio. And what that means is a balance of stocks and bonds. And so that particular balance would be in equities and in typically 10-year US Treasuries. So 10 years ago, it would produce more than it does today. But how much more? Well, if you had $1 million today, you would be producing about what 250,000 produced just 10 years ago. That's a 75% difference in dividends and interest since 2011.
Wow. Americans have lost 75% of that dividend and interest income that they were receiving in 2011. That is only 10 years ago. Like, how do they make that up? How do we make that up?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And that's really solved by sitting down with financial advisors and putting that kind of strategy together, for sure. But that's the strategy that we need to look at to be able to determine whether or not we've got an effective retirement strategy, because that dynamic alone exists because of the manipulation of the economy and the lowering of interest rates and putting us in really more of a compromised position. But let me talk a little bit more about inflation, because I have kind of a fun way to wrap things up tonight. And it's really kind of a cool thing, because very often I'll have conversations with my clients, and we're talking about inflation, and they bring up this idea of shrinkflation. And I think it's the coolest thing. I mean, it's not really a great result, but it's the coolest thing, because what's happening is that companies are doing things. I guess one would be like General Mills and breakfast cereal. They will create cereal boxes now. And I guess the number that I read was that a typical 19.3 ounce box is now 18.1 ounces, selling for about the same price.
Huh.
And so instead of raising the price on it, so you're looking and saying, oh, I'm paying more for the box, they just give you less and charge you the same. They call it shrinkflation. So I thought that was fun to look at. One other fun thing I think about inflation, just to kind of have some fun with it, it's my Big Mac index. So the Big Mac, everyone's had a Big Mac. You can never talk to someone who hasn't had a Big Mac, but you might not talk to someone who ate a Big Mac back in the 1960s. But did you know that a Big Mac in 1960 was 45 cents? All right, now that's so long ago. A lot of people, oh well, what's that really mean? Well, in the 1990s, it was $2.45. All right. Now, do you know what a Big Mac is today in 2020? Well, it's $4.95.
Oh my goodness.
So gives you some idea of inflation over time and, that type of thing. So there you have it. That's inflation for today.
Yeah, going to McDonald's is not a cheap date anymore based off of that. Man.
Right. Yeah.
I know that I learned so much. I feel like about inflation and this idea of shrinkflation. I think that that's something definitely to draw on. You're like feeling okay about paying more if you're getting more, but what happens when you aren't getting that and you're like, oh, I'm just paying more for less? Like, there's some dissonance happening here. Like, this is not right.
It's kind of sneaky, isn't it?
Yeah, so sneaky. But that was so much great information, Ken. I think everyone can agree that this is such an important topic, especially these days. Right now, it's so important to understand what's going on. And so thank you so much for joining me and for kind of speaking to all of this and answering all my questions.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me. It's been a great time. Appreciate the time. Look forward to seeing you guys again.
Absolutely. If you guys want any more information about the topic we discussed, feel free to click the link above and it will take you directly to Ken's business page where you can get more information. All right, everybody, this has been great and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.